So in September, the House of Representatives did a few things all at once that were extremely unusual. They passed a piece of legislation unanimously and also stood up for the right of a free press against intrusions by the federal government. Now, normally if the House passes something unanimously, it's a resolution celebrating Santa Claus or the naming of a post office somewhere. But this bill has actual teeth, and it has real support in the Senate and could genuinely become law if Schumer moves it to the floor in the next couple of weeks or puts it into the omnibus package that's being debated now. So it's called the Press Act, and it's sponsored by Maryland Democrat Jamie Raskin, and it effectively blocks the federal government from using subpoenas or jail or the threat of jail to coerce reporters to turn over sources, and it blocks tech companies from sharing sensitive information from journalists' phones and other devices with the federal government. It also has one of these clever acronyms, which in this case stands for the Protect Reporters from Exploitative State Spying Act. So one of the key questions that always confronts any type of shield law that is intended to protect journalists runs into the question of who counts as a journalist. We certainly do not want the federal government licensing reporters or keeping lists of who's a real journalist and who's not. That's the opposite of a free press. That's a government-regulated press. And this bill does a great job of giving an expansive definition, calling a covered journalist, quote, a person who regularly gathers, prepares, collects photographs, records, writes, edits, reports, investigates, or publishes news or information that concerns local, national, or international events or other matters of public interest for dissemination to the public. Note that professional is not in there. The second problem that always gets in the way of bills like this is fear-mongering about a terrorist with a ticking time bomb somewhere. It's a scenario that has basically never occurred in the real world, but Raskin was smart to write an exception directly into the law that deals with that fantastical scenario. So it makes an exception if, quote, disclosure of the protected information is necessary to prevent or to identify any perpetrator of an act of terrorism against the United States, or disclosure of the protected information is necessary to prevent a threat of imminent violence, significant bodily harm, or death, unquote. So the final important question is what information is protected? And the bill offers a sweeping and impressive definition here. They say, quote, the term protected information means any information identifying a source who provided information as part of engaging in journalism, and any records, content of a communication, documents, or information that a covered journalist obtained or created as part of engaging in journalism. That's pretty good. Previous press shield laws have included huge gaping loopholes around national security written into law at the behest of the national security establishment, which end up gutting the law. My colleague James Risen, back when he was at the New York Times, was in a long-running legal battle with the Bush administration and then the Obama administration, in which they repeatedly threatened him with jail time for not revealing sources. He refused, and they eventually backed off. But if this bill were passed into law, prosecutors would not have been able to have come after Risen because there was no imminent threat of anything, just vaguely worded assertions about national security that shouldn't be taken seriously coming from a government that lies regularly about such threats. So the bill puts similarly strict obstacles in front of prosecutors who are looking to go straight to Google or Apple. Now, another good element of this law is that it would block the government from secretly colluding with big tech to surveil journalists. Before a tech company could turn anything over, they'd have to let the journalists know about the subpoena and give them a chance to respond in court. The bill also narrows what can be requested by subpoena down to information needed to confirm what was reported is true. In other words, if a journalist exposes a crime with his or her reporting, that's often not enough for a prosecutor because a news article is technically hearsay. Back when I was at the Washington City paper, for instance, I exposed a slumlord who appeared to be breaking all sorts of laws, and DC prosecutors came after him. They subpoenaed me, but through the city paper's lawyer, we refused to testify about any sources involved in reporting. The prosecutors agreed to drop the subpoena if I would testify under oath that the article I wrote was true and accurate. And I was more than happy to do that. So if journalism does expose criminal behavior like that, there are circumstances where it's okay to confirm that what you reported is, in fact, true. Now, this bill limits what can be obtained, quote, to the purpose of verifying published information, unquote. As long as that doesn't compel a journalist to reveal sources, as the rest of the bill says, then that part seems okay. On Wednesday, Democrats tried to move the bill through the Senate by unanimous consent, like had been done in the House, but it was blocked by Republican Senator Tom Cotton, who made this incredible argument on the Senate floor.
Senator from Arkansas. Reserving the right to object, and I want to make a few brief remarks here about why I object to the passage of this bill, the so-called Press Act, which would open a floodgate of leaks damaging to law enforcement and our nation's security. The press, unfortunately, has a long and sordid history of publishing sensitive information from inside the government that damages our national security. During the Vietnam War, the New York Times published the Pentagon Papers in an effort to demoralize the American people and turn them against the war effort. During the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, the press routinely revealed details about America's efforts to hunt down terrorists, details that helped our enemies cover their tracks and evade justice. These leaks were reckless and harmful to our national security. Yet the Press Act would immunize journalists and leakers alike from scrutiny and consequences for their actions. This bill would prohibit the government from compelling any individual who calls himself a journalist from disclosing the source or substance of such damaging leaks. This effectively would grant journalists special legal privileges to disclose sensitive information that no other citizen enjoys. It would treat the press as a special caste of crusaders for truth who are somehow set apart from their fellow citizens. But that's not how the law historically has treated journalists. Our laws have always made clear that journalists can be held criminally liable for what they publish.
So he goes on, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the bill still actually has a shot of going through, as it might get included in an end-of-year omnibus bill that's now being written by both parties. Cotton went on to say that he also objected to the bill because, quote, if recent history has taught us anything, it's that too many journalists these days are little more than left-wing activists who are at best ambivalent about America, unquote. Now, what's interesting about Tom Cotton is you might...
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Soccer and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.